My name is Ken Klaver. My pronouns are he, his, him. I am the assistant registrar for the University of Northern Colorado. I've been in this position for 6 years, but prior to that, I spent 20 years as a registrar in Southern California and got tired of the clutter and the number of people. And my wife was from Colorado, and she said, "Let's move to Colorado." So here we are. So I am in the office we call Bear Central. Bear Central is an area in the campus commons where we have integrated business services. We have financial aid office, we have the Bursar or student accounts office, and we have the office of the registrar. And so joining us today is Kathy Bland. She'll get a chance to introduce herself here in just a minute. And Andrea Malone with our Office of Financial Aid. And they will be talking to you a little bit about your aid, how to pay the bill. And I'm here to talk a little bit about FERPA. So FERPA is not like a bodily noise. It's an acronym for Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974. And so I wanted to tell just a quick little story. This law to protect the privacy of student data goes all the way back to 1974. And so the legislation actually knew how critical and how important it was to protect student data, even back in 1974, where the only computers were really in large universities, and they were probably the size of your basement. There was not really the idea of personal computing at that point, or having your own cell phone or those kinds of technologies. And so I was an undergraduate student in 1980 through 1983, actually 79 through 83. And so I lived at a time and went to school at a time when this law was pretty new. But they really didn't know how to use it. So just a quick story. When I was a student and I wanted my final grade, I would go to the classroom that class was held in. I would go up to the door of that classroom, and there would be a list posted, a paper list. And on that list was our names, our birth date, our social security number, and our grades. And so that's how we found out our grades, because there was no email or anything like that. And so you can imagine, even back then, they were still struggling to kind of figure out how to enforce and use this new law. But that information, if you think about that now in the digital age, that information, someone could steal identities. And so universities over years have learned more and more how to better protect student data. So I'm going to go through some quick slides before I introduce financial aid and the Bursar student accounts and talk a little bit about FERPA. So Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act is the official name for it. We just lovingly call it FERPA. So what is it? FERPA is a federal law that requires universities that give Title IV financial aid, which are Stafford loans, Pell Grants, any kind of federal financial aid that is dispersed by the U.S. Department of Education, requires universities to enforce and take safeguards to ensure student data. It was passed in 1974, as I said before, and it really is there to safeguard the rights of students, to limit disclosure of information, and to define what an educational record is. Students have 4 rights under FERPA. And those are the right to inspect, the right to request an amendment. The most common thing we see for that is you need to change your address in the system. That is changing your record. And so students can request that to be updated. It could be it could go as far as challenging a grade or challenging a statement that's on a transcript or something like that. The student has the right to control disclosure, and then finally they have the right to disclose or file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education. There's something, FERPA covers K through 12, so it starts at kindergarten, excuse me, K through post-secondary education. So it starts at kindergarten and goes all the way as long as a student is in school, whether that is a undergraduate degree, a master's degree, or even a postgraduate degree, a doctorate, educational specialist, something like that. And so something interesting happens when students graduate from a high school. Normally, the rights to the educational record were with parents during their kindergarten through 12th grade educational experience. But as soon as students graduate from high school, regardless of the age, the rights, those four rights, the right to inspect, amend, control disclosure, and the right to file a complaint, transfer now from the parent or guardian to the student. So it's very important to understand that. A lot of times there's some confusion because parents have had control or access to that information for a very long time. And we know that parents and guardians and support people are very much invested in their students' educational experience and may even contribute to that. But what happens is that those four rights fall from change from the parent to the student, and so that's a big paradigm change, and so it's one of the things that we deal with quite a bit. When we look at disclosing information, when we look at now how do we disclose information, there are some legislation or parts of law that allow that to happen. And so here are some of the examples. If there's a health and safety emergency and we feel that there's a threat to the student's well-being or welfare, then we have an exemption under FERPA to contact a parent or a legal guardian in that situation. If the student provides what's called a written consent, a consent to release form, the student can submit that at the beginning of the semester, and they can designate who they would like information or what information to be released to a third party, and that's normally a parent, but not all the time. If there's a violation of the institutional code of conduct that involves the use of drugs or alcohol for a student that's under the age of 21, the university has the discretion under the Dean of Students to reach out to support people, usually parents, to let them know what's going on. And then finally, there is a clause that says that schools may, they're not required to, but they may provide information to parents that declare their student as a dependent on the most recent federal income tax form. The problem with that is that we see that is a huge invasion of privacy. Because in order for us to use that clause, the parent would have to provide their most recent income tax. And so we feel that under the student written consent is a much easier way for parents and support people to get access to that information. Just some recommendations for students and for parents and support people, if you haven't already had the discussion, start discussing the expectations. I know when my kids went to school, we had that discussion about, hey, I'm helping you pay for this. I would like to know what's going on. Can you provide me with your grades at the end of the semester? And so there was an expectation that I was going to be to be a part of that conversation and monitor what was going on. For my son, I had one experience. For my daughter, I had a totally different experience. And so those conversations are going to be based on your relationship with your student and what both your student's expectations are and what the parent or support person's expectations are. But the biggest thing to remember is to partner with the student to get access to that information. Sometimes that information is simply, I need to know that you're enrolled full time so that I can get a discount on my insurance, or I need to know that you're a good student doing well so that I can get a discount on your auto insurance. And so have those conversations, have those discussions, because now when parents call, we're going to immediately say, if you don't have a consent to release on file, we're going to say, can you have the student contact us, because we believe that the student needs to be involved in what information is being released about them and what information is being asked about them. So it's good to have those conversations now, and it does avoid problems later down the road. So that's FERPA in a nutshell. If you have more questions about that, feel free to contact me. My email is kenneth.claver, and that's CLAVIR@unco.edu. And you can call me as well at 970-351-4315, and we'll have some information at the end of the screen for you as well. And then we can later on we'll answer questions that you may have. So if you have those questions, hold on to them, and we'll go from there. So now I'd like to turn it over to Andrea. She's going to talk a little bit about financial aid. And Andrea, just let me know when you want the slide forwarded.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken. And hi, everyone. My name is Andrea. As Ken mentioned, I work for the Office of Financial Aid. I have been with UNC for a very short while, so I'm still fairly new to UNC and to Colorado, but I bring with me knowledge of financial aid from both the state of Michigan and Florida. So financial aid has been something that I have been doing for I wouldn't say a very long time, but a decent amount of time. And I'm really excited to bring that knowledge here to UNC and to all of you. So to get us started, a great segue, I think, from talking about FERPA is acknowledging that FERPA is 100% applicable when trying to get information on your students' financial aid. We love seeing families involved in their students' process, in their journeys academically, and we interact with parents and families all the time who want to get information on their students' accounts and help them along the way with, what is due for their bill and what aid is going to pay and what isn't. I think it's a great segue to begin by saying that that release consent form is required for our office as well. And so we welcome everyone to make sure that they have those conversations with their students. If you feel like your students are going to be confused by this financial aid process, it's a great opportunity for you to get those consents so that when you call on behalf of your student, we are able to help you guys dissect their accounts and dissect the process and what needs to be done. So moving into financial aid, I think that even before your students embarked on their college journey, the term financial aid was loosely heard throughout high school, maybe even middle school, out in the world. It's such a general term that consists of so many different things. So many different ways to apply for aid, so many different types of financial aid. And so today I hope to not overwhelm you, but to provide some information on what that looks like, specifically what that looks like here at UNC. For starters, financial aid is money that will help students pay for college. So really that can consist of multiple types of award, multiple types of funding, essentially made to help students pay for their college and their educational expenses. Here at UNC specifically, 96% of first-time freshmen received some type of financial aid at UNC in the fall of 2019. We were able to award a total of over $141 million in financial aid to students in 2019 and 2020. And just for some added perspective, 55% of first-time freshmen in the fall of 2019 did borrow some type of student loan. Next slide, please. All right, so talking about how we should apply for financial aid. The most common way to apply for financial aid is going to be by completing the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. This application is free to students. Students do not and should not pay to complete this application. This application will apply students for federal need-based aid. Even if you or your student believe that you will not be eligible for any need-based aid, many institutional and departmental grants and scholarships do request this information. So we always encourage families to go ahead and fill out that application, the FAFSA application, even if they're not sure if they're going to be eligible for anything need-based. On the slide, you are going to see the website, studentaid.gov, and that is where the FAFSA application can be accessed and submitted. Students and parents both will need to create an FSA ID when completing the FAFSA application in order to complete it and electronically sign their FAFSA application. And there is a school code. Students are able to search the school that they want to add. So they can search UNC on the application itself, or they can add that code 001349, and that'll make sure that the FAFSA gets sent over to us. Students do need to indicate our school on the application. Otherwise, we are not able to retrieve it from the Department of Education. And so sometimes we do have some cases where students didn't add us. And so we do have to work with them to get that, that school code added, because we are not able to pull it, which is probably good in terms of privacy, but sometimes inconvenient when we're having those conversations. Okay, and a bare fact. So the FAFSA opens up October 1 of each year for the following academic year. So in October 1 of 2020, that FAFSA opened up for your incoming freshmen for 21-22. The UNC priority deadline for maximum aid consideration is March 1st. And while we do request that the FAFSAs be submitted by March 1st for maximum aid consideration, we still encourage students to complete their FAFSA, even if they haven't done so yet, even if it is considered late, because there are still awards that they're going to be potentially eligible for, even if they miss that priority deadline. So it's never too late to submit the FAFSA for the most part. I would say the main takeaway for students and their parents who maybe have already completed their FAFSA for this year would be that it does need to be renewed and submitted every year that your student is in school. So every October 1, you want to monitor that FAFSA release date and time, and get in there and submit the new one for the new year. It doesn't roll over, and that's probably the biggest thing, to make sure that every year your student is prepared and gets their financial aid packages in a timely fashion. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about how much it costs to come to UNC. So tuition and fees is, excuse me, estimated at about $10,908. And if you're living on campus, the estimated housing cost is about $12,152. There is a very large number, and it's called the cost of attendance. That number is about $27,786, and that is much higher than the two amounts that I put together there. This cost of attendance is actually an estimated amount. It is not a bill. So if you ever see anything that says preliminary budget or cost of attendance, it is not the direct bill that you or your student has to pay to attend UNC. The cost of attendance is really more so of an estimated total that we generate that basically outlines what we expect students to spend in 1 year, essentially living and breathing while they attend school. So this means that it includes things like meals, personal hygiene, transportation, things in addition to tuition and housing that we know students are going to have to spend money on in order to be successful and really in order to stay alive. And so we create this number so that students can budget. But it is definitely not the bill. It is not what you have to pay UNC in order to attend. Next slide, please. All right. Okay, and so financial aid for students does include grants, work study opportunities, and even loans. So it's a very, like I mentioned before, very vast term. The most common grant that everyone kind of hears about is the federal Pell Grant, and that is the grant that students apply for through the FAFSA application. But there are also other types of grants. So there are other grants that students can be eligible for. There is the Colorado grant, there's an SEOG grant that out-of-state students can receive, and then there are other need-based grants as well. So students are eligible for a series of grants, and we encourage them to submit the FAFSA application because that's going to allow us to determine what aid they can receive in terms of need-based grants. There is also work study, and work study is one of my favorite financial aid programs. It offers students the ability to connect with employment opportunities while they earn up to the amount of their award. And I just personally believe that it is just such a beneficial program for students. It puts extra money in their pocket. It lets them get connected. It lets them network. They get relevant work experience. It's just a really great program. And we offer it in a multitude of capacities. And there are many students on campus who benefit from it. And it's something that I just absolutely love. So students are able to find work opportunities within campus departments, within campus offices, or even out in the community with employers who offer them experience, oftentimes in fields that are relevant to their education and what their goals are after college. It's really great because it is regulated and students are regulated within work study. They can't work too many hours. There's always this flexibility to build their work schedule around their class schedule so they don't have the same issues that they might find if they're working at a store and or a company that's saying, hey, you are required to work, during this time of day and the student has class, and then it can be problematic. Work study is really great because since it is offered through the school, it is something that obviously is going to put education first. And as I mentioned before, I just think this is a really wonderful way for students to make some extra money on the side and to really just get connected to their campus community, as well as their greater community too. There are also many federal loan programs available to students that will help them pay for their educational expenses. I will break these down a little further in a little bit. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to bring it back to talking about free money before we talk about loans. So UNC has a scholarship application that offers over 600 different scholarships. It is available for students. I believe it's November 1, and I know Marty is on this call, so he can correct me if I am wrong, but it is available for students on November 1 of each year. And if I don't hear anything, I'm going to assume it's correct. Yes. So yes, November 1, it opens every year. The priority deadline for this application is February 1 for consideration for the upcoming award year. So similar to the FAFSA, it comes out a year in advance, students apply for it. We review it throughout those months in between and package students for the upcoming year. I will say most scholarship recipients from this particular list of scholarships are students who have already completed at least their first year of college. But this application is still really good to know about, and I like to communicate it with parents because it's really beneficial for your students' second year. And it's going to come out in what, like 4 months, 5 months? So good to know. Next slide, please. And we're going to work our way back to loans. So as I mentioned before, there are various federal loan programs that help students with and their families with educational expenses that sometimes that free money can't cover. There are student loans, federal student loans. There are subsidized and unsubsidized federal student loans that students are offered through their FAFSA application. The subsidized loan is the one that I prefer of the two. It is the loan that does not accrue interest while a student is enrolled in at least 6 credit hours. So in a perfect world situation, essentially a student wouldn't see the interest accrue on their loans until after they graduate, as they're borrowing during their academic career. Students are eligible for up to $3,500 their first year in subsidized loans. And then that also gets kind of paired with this unsubsidized loan in the amount of $2,000. And this one's a little different. It is a student loan, it is a federal student loan, but it does accrue interest during a student's enrollment. So it's not like that other one where it's interest free until after graduation, ideally. The beauty about both of those loans, though, is that they don't require repayment until after your student stops attending at least half-time 6 credit hours. So if your student is consistently enrolled each academic year, at least 6 credit hours or more, then they're likely not going to need to start repayment if they can't afford to do so until after they graduate. We do like to have conversations about just financial wellness and awareness with our students. If they can't afford to pay the interest on the unsubsidized loan during their time in college, it does help with that repayment at the end. But again, it's not something that is required with the federal unsubsidized loan. Repayment doesn't have to begin until after graduation. As I mentioned before, both of these applications are offered to students when they apply for the FAFSA. So a student will see it on their award letter, a student will see it in their URSA account in an offer status. So we will certainly not accept that loan for them. It is simply there for them to use if they need it. Students are 100% encouraged to decline those loans if they feel they don't need it. If they are able to set up a payment plan, if they're able to pay it on their own, or if they have enough financial aid in other ways where they don't need to borrow, they can certainly decline that offer. They are not required to borrow those loans that are in their award package. And then finally, there is also a Parent Plus loan that is available to families as an additional option for covering those expenses. These loans are in the parent's name. So this one kind of takes a step up and has the parent support the student with their educational expenses. It's in the parent's name. It does require a credit check. So it is a little more complex than the federal student loans. For any family who maybe doesn't qualify for a Parent Plus loan for whatever reason, there is an opportunity to receive additional federal student unsubsidized loan. So there is a way to continue to assist families who maybe are not eligible for Parent Plus loans. Next slide, please. And then there are private loans, which I do want to talk about just a little bit. Private loans are through private lenders, so not through the federal government, not through the Department of Education. And we always ask that students and their parents and families just be mindful of private loans. They don't have comparable repayment plans or deferral options to that of federal loans. And so we always do like to say or recommend that students really look to these options as a last resort, as needed, excuse me. Private loans are oftentimes attractive because the initial interest rate can be really low. But part of that catch is that those rates can sometimes skyrocket when payments are missed. And that does not happen with federal loans. And so it's really just a little more regulated on the federal side. And so these private loans can be a catch. And so we just like to talk about them. They can be good options for students who really, really need them. But we just like to provide that information so that parents and students and families really understand what they might be getting themselves into. Next slide, please. All right, so I am going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into work study. We partner with the Center for Career Readiness, and we provide students a portal for finding job opportunities both on and off campus. So a student would receive a work study award onto their account. They can accept that award, and then they can go into this portal and find job opportunities that would best fit the experience that they are seeking. Federal work study is typically around $4,000 for the academic year, and students will hold a part-time employment or a part-time position throughout the semester, working up to the amount that they were awarded. And as I mentioned before, we partner with campus offices, campus departments. We have work study peers in our office of financial aid, and admissions has some. I mean, work study is all over the university. It's really awesome. And we also do work with some employers who facilitate work study off campus as well. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm gonna go into a process called bear verification. And hopefully none of you have seen this on your student's account, but if you have, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means. Bear verification is a process that seeks to verify information on a student's FAFSA. So it is a process that is required from the Department of Education that we at UNC will fulfill by requesting the student and family provide documentation to support certain areas of their FAFSA. So basically, the best way to think about it is it's kind of like an audit on the FAFSA. And unfortunately, about 60% of all FAFSA filers, like nationwide, are selected by the Department of Education for verification. So if you are selected, or if your student's FAFSA selected, please don't feel like you did anything wrong, because it really doesn't necessarily reflect on how you completed the application. And also know that you are not alone. There are 60% of people in the United States completing verification, because that's just the way the Department of Education wants to audit their FAFSAs. So students who undergo the bear verification process are going to commonly be asked to submit certain forms and documents that will allow us to verify certain things that were indicated on the FAFSA. So some of the main things are, we may ask you to submit family tax return transcripts or the 1040 forms from the year on the FAFSA, maybe W-2s, and we may just ask you to confirm the household size and how many of those members are attending college for the year. Students will receive notice that they have requirements for bear verification. If you see these requirements, if your student sees these requirements and they have questions, please contact our office. This process is definitely and can definitely be overwhelming, and we are here to help, especially if this is your first student going to college, or even if you had another student go to college and they never got selected for verification. It's one of those processes that you really don't know about until you're in it or you're working in financial aid, and so we are here to help. We're available in person, on the phone, over email, and we're even doing virtual appointments. So we are 100% here to help students and their families complete that bear verification process as stress-free as possible. Next slide. All right, so this slide shows a award letter that students should have received. Your students should have received an award letter that looks a little bit like this. If for some reason they did not receive an award letter from us, from UNC, please contact our office so that we can discuss what their financial aid options are and if any requirements need to be resolved, or what is needed in order to get your aid offer situated and squared away. Next slide, please. So the award letter in detail will outline the financial aid awards that UNC is offering students. It will include the grants, the scholarships, the work study offer, and the federal student loans and a Parent Plus loan possibility, so what a student can receive. Something that I didn't mention earlier before that I think is also important to note with any loan is that if a student sees a let's say $3,500 in the subsidized loan on their award letter, they do not have to accept the full amount. So students are able to determine on their own that, you know what, I only think I need $500 a semester to get me down to that zero balance, and they can partially accept $1,000 for the year, $500 for the semester, and so they are definitely not forced to borrow more than they need. They're encouraged to only really borrow what they need. And as I mentioned also before, you can decline any loan offers if you don't need them at all. Grants and scholarships, the free money, those are going to be automatically accepted for students, but students should really monitor their URSA accounts to make sure that they don't have any requirements that need to be completed in order for those awards to pay out. So you wouldn't want for August to roll around and something's holding up the aid, and then next thing you know, the award's not paying out, and there was a requirement that was preventing it from paying out. The next thing here is the preliminary budget that you see. That is the cost of attendance that I talked a little bit about earlier. Again, this is just an estimate of what we anticipate that students will need. This is not their bill. So $27,164, it is not what they need to pay UNC in order to attend school in the fall. And I definitely feel like I've talked everyone's ears off, but now I'm going to turn it over to Kathy so that she can talk about the College Opportunity Fund and billing.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Bland. I am the assistant bursar here at UNC. So I work in the student billing office. To kind of go over with some of the stuff and how all of our offices tie together. The FERPA form, same thing in our office. If you don't have that on file, or if your student hasn't set you up as an authorized user for their billing information, we cannot get into the specifics of your student's bill. We can go over some generalizations for you, but we can't go into more specific information for your student without having that information. One of the first things we're going to talk about is a College Opportunity Fund stipend. This is free money from the state of Colorado for in-state Colorado residents. So if your student is an in-state student, they should apply and authorize for the College Opportunity Fund stipend. It's not a loan. It doesn't have to be paid back. The current rate for this last academic year was $40 per credit hour. I am not sure yet what that's going to increase, if it's going to increase for this upcoming academic year. The state legislature sets that dollar amount. UNC does not set that dollar amount. If your student has already done the application, it's a one-time application with the state. They don't need to apply again, but they will need to authorize the use of that stipend here at UNC, and they can do that through their URSA account underneath the financial tab. If your student isn't sure if they've done either part of that, they can definitely contact our office and we can look at that for them. We can see if they've done the application. We can see if they've done the authorization. So we are happy to help answer any of those questions that you may have. Next slide, please. And this goes to show you where you can see that on there. You can also get information about what is COF, what does this mean, what is this money, where does it come from, all of that on the financial tab as well. But this is where your student would see that information. Next slide, please. So after your financial aid has paid through on your student's account, what are your other options to then pay their bill if you have any portion of that bill left over? So we offer a few different options for you. You can come into our office and pay in cash or with check. We cannot do a credit card over the phone. We cannot do a credit card in person because there is a convenience fee that for paying by a credit card, and that's a 2.85% fee. If you do pay by credit card online on your billing statement, you will see one line for your payment that you made, and then another line that shows a convenience fee. So just be aware that it shows us two separate line items on your credit card statement. We do accept any kind of credit card payment you would like to make. If you pay by check by mailing it in or online or in person, there's no fee to pay with a check. There's only a fee to pay by card, and card means credit card or debit card. Either one of them will charge you a fee. You can also take your student's bill and split it into our payment plan called Bear Pay. So Bear Pay is a $50 enrollment fee every semester you want to use it. It does not carry forward from semester to semester. You must sign up for it every semester you want to use it. If you sign up for it by August 20th or January 20th, it will split that bill into 5 installments throughout this semester. Those payments come out automatically on the 20th of each month by whatever payment method you have selected to have those payments come out of. Be aware, if you sign up for Bear Pay with a credit card, you will still be assessed that convenience fee on a monthly basis as well. It doesn't make that fee go away. The latest you can sign up for Bear Pay for fall and spring semesters would be the 19th of September and the 19th of February. So after that deadline, you can no longer sign up for Bear Pay. Billing statements will be available for you on August 3rd. Be aware that that billing statement will not have financial aid on it. So you might get a bill and we'll just make up a number for maybe $15,000 or $12,000, whatever your bill may be. And you're wondering, well, I had financial aid. It should have covered all of this. Financial aid will not pay onto your student's bill until the week before classes start. So don't panic. Your aid is going to be coming through. It just takes a while for us to get that processed. Bills for the fall semester will be due on September 3rd. That is when your billing statement is due. After that date, we do have a little bit of a grace period before we assess a 1.5% service charge on any outstanding balance that you would have. Those service charges go up monthly. So you'll want to make sure that you are going out and looking at your student's account. We do encourage your students to go out and set you up as an authorized user. As an authorized user, it gives you access to their billing information. It will give you your own username and password to just go into your student's bill, because we know that not all students want their parents in their URSA account. And we have had some issues in the past where the parent has gone in and changed their student's URSA password without their student knowing about it. And then they go to try to register or do something in there and they don't know what that password was changed to. So this is a nice way for you to be able to view their bill. Your student can set up as many authorized users as they choose to. It does not have to be one person. It can be both parents, grandparents, whoever they want to have access to their billing information. The other nice thing that I like with having those authorized users is you can sign up for Bear Pay, you can make payments, you can save your payment plan as an authorized user, which then you only have access to see that information and to pay the bill with that credit card or checking account. So if your student, say, got a parking citation or something on their bill, and you weren't aware of it and they just went in and used your credit card or checking account to just pay that bill because they just wanted to get that paid, you avoid some of those issues because your student doesn't have access to your payment information. Only you have access to that information. On that first billing statement that you get from us in August, you should see your college opportunity fund stipend on that bill, since it is not part of the financial aid award letter. As an in-state student, if you do not see that stipend on your first billing statement, you should reach out to us so we can figure out what is going on with it or what we are missing. The university does need the student social security number in order to get those funds to pay through. It's how we match up some of the stuff with the state of Colorado to make sure that all of the information matches up with them. I think that's my last slide. You can reach our office too by calling the Bear Central phone number, which is 970-351-4862. We are option number 3. That phone number will get you access to all 3 of our offices, Registrar Financial Aid and the Bursar office. You can go onto our website, unco.edu/Bursar, and set up a virtual appointment if you would like to meet with someone one-on-one. We do have that capability as well. And also, you can give us a call anytime and email us if you have any questions. We are here to help you. We are here to help answer any questions that you may have. We want to try to make sure that you understand what is on your student's bill. We do not have the current rates yet unfortunately, for the 21-22 academic year yet. Our Board of Trustees has not approved those tuition rates yet. When those are approved, information will be emailed out to students to let them know that that information is available, and our costs page will update when that happens. I believe those rates should hopefully be available either later this month or early in July. But that's all I have. So I guess we can open it up for questions at this point.
I think we had
I'm sorry, go ahead, Cedric.
we had a few questions in the chat that I wanted to wrap around to, but Ken, if you have a comment first, I can.
Yeah, I was seeing one. Where is the where can we find the consent to release form? So at www.unco.edu /registrar, we have a forms page, and on that forms page, there's a section for FERPA, and that information, that form is available there that can be printed out, filled out, and submitted.
And then we had a few other questions that I saw in chat that I don't think we have addressed yet. So the first one was, can a student apply for the College Opportunity Fund if they are not a resident but were born in the state of Colorado?
The College Opportunity Fund stipend is only for residents of Colorado. So if they were born here, but then did not live here, did not graduate from a Colorado high school, they are not eligible for that stipend.
And then the next one I saw is the authorized user the same as the consent to release form?
So
it is not.
It's not. It's two different things.
All right.
So the authorized user is the ability to set up an account so that you can view the billing statement, make payments, see the account, see the balance. The consent to release form would be a form to allow third-party parents, support people to talk with various offices, including the bursar's office, but also financial aid, dean of students, faculty advisors, things like that, depending on what the student released.
For us, the authorized user form, we will, if you are an authorized user on your student's account, it at least lets us know that they've given you access to their billing. So for our office, for that purpose, it will give us a little bit more of a consent to release some more billing information to you, but we can't give you more specific information about financial aid or any of that without having that FERPA on file.
All right, we have a slew of questions that are getting added to the chat. So the next one is, can we pay the tuition bill directly from our 529 account?
Yes, you can pay your bill directly to UNC from your 529 account. I would reach out to them and find out what information they need, the address and all of that information of where to send your payment for your 529 plan is on our website. You are going to send that into the cashier's office here to UNC. I usually encourage people to put not only our campus box, which is campus box 14, but also our physical mailroom address, because sometimes they like to have a physical address. So our address to our mailroom is 501 20th Street. If you are having a payment come from your 529, please include your student's bear number on there. Sometimes if you have a very common name, it's really difficult for us to figure out whose account that should be applied to. So we do encourage you on the remittance information to include their bear number.
All right, our next question is, are we able to access putting money onto a student's dining dollars card through the parent login?
No, the parent login only gives you access to billing information. Cedric, you may be able to give some more information on how they can add dining dollars to their student's account outside of URSA. I think there might be a way to do that, but I'm not sure.
There is a way, and Housing does have a separate link for that, which you can find on Housing's website that allows you to add money to your students' dining dollars. All right. Our next question is there a fee when using a debit card as well?
Yes, any card that you use will charge you that convenience fee, whether it's a debit card or a credit card. So if you're paying with a debit card, you might as well use your bank routing information and account information, since it's going to be pulling from the same place. So we definitely encourage you to sign up with using your account, with bank account information if you're paying with a debit card.
Thank you. Our next question is Bear Time a one-time fee? Does it cover the entire time at UNC? Is it per semester?
You have to sign up for Bear Pay each semester, and it is a $50 fee each semester. The advantages of Bear Pay is you are not assessed those 1.5% monthly service charges on your student's account. So that won't, as long as you're current on your plan, and it won't prevent your student from not being able to register for a future term. If there is still a balance over $200 at the time of registration, we will go ahead and allow them to register knowing that that money is still coming in from Bear Pay.
And then also related to Bear Pay, what is the deadline for Bear Pay?
The deadline, if you want a 5-month payment plan, will be August 20th. Be aware that sometimes financial aid hasn't all come through at that point in time. So your first installment may be more, and then your other installments will adjust as if any financial aid comes in onto your student's account. The absolute latest deadline for Bear Pay for a 4-month plan is September 19th. After September 19th, Bear Pay is no longer available.
Thank you. Our next question is, will we see or will we need to fill out the consent to release form and authorized user info each year or semester?
So I can answer for the consent form. The consent form is in place as long until the student rescinds it. The answer would be no. Once the student submits the consent to release, then that is in force until it's rescinded.
And as far as the authorized user goes, it will be the same thing. Your student has the ability to take away your access at any point in time, but it will stay with your student as long as they have you signed up as an authorized user. It will stay.
All right, our next question, I think you may have already addressed, but I will ask it just in case. Is the information required to pay directly from the 529 account on a website? So
yes,
maybe
it is
what's
on
that?
our website of where to submit your any payments to the university. All of that information is on our website. If you have any questions, you can definitely reach out as well. If you have more specific questions, you can reach out and talk to us as well.
Okay, I see one question related to housing. I can answer that one at the end. And we also do have a parent orientation session, which is specifically related to housing and dining. So as you have those questions, I would recommend that you attend that session. Our next one related to financial aid is to qualify for the American Opportunity Credit. Does the $2,000 or $2,500 have to come from parents' funds, or can it come from the 529 account?
I think that's a tax related question.
I think so too. I don't have much insight on that. I don't know if Marty does. Marty is here. He may have more information.
I am here and I would defer to a tax expert on that. Obviously, it would be very safe coming from a 529 or the 529, but with all the different programs and different tax things, we'd have to apologize and kick that to a tax expert.
Sorry, this is Jerry. I'm the bursar, and yes, 529 money is a payment from a parent. It is your own money. So yes, either money coming from a 529 plan or a payment directly from a parent does qualify for the American Opportunity Credit.
Thanks, Miss Jerry.
Welcome.
Thank you for popping in with that. So our next question is, which office do we make an appointment with for our financials? And I will let you all answer.
I would say it depends, but I would say if you want to explore what options your student has for paying for their education, definitely come and see us again, in person, on the phone, email, virtual appointments if you guys are, a little further away, and all of that information is on our website. But if you'd like to talk about your bill specifically, I would say go see student accounts.
Awesome. Our next question is, where can the authorized user form be found?
So your student will access that through their URSA account. So under the financial tab, they'll want to go out like they want to pay their student bill. And then it will take them out to where our payment gateway is through TouchNet. And that's where they can go in and set up an authorized user onto their student account.
Let's see. We have a question that says, is there a job fair at the beginning of the year to find opportunities with no need student work? Yeah, I'll let you go, Andrea, and then I can hop into.
Yeah, there is. So we do have something in the works. I believe it is for early September, and the date specifically escapes me right now. And there are multiple opportunities for students to be connected with employment through even work study that isn't need-based. And then Cedric, please feel free to add any of your
Yes,
own.
that's exactly what I was going to say. And then also we have a wonderful portal called Handshake, which students can access to find all sorts of on-campus and near campus employment opportunities. So that's an app that students can download, or they can access it online. So highly recommend it.
I'd like to jump in for a moment and just let parents know that for your students' books, those cannot be charged to their UNC student bill. You have to pay for those separately at the bookstore or wherever you would like to have to buy your students' books for them. And one of the other things that our slides didn't go over is what happens if your student has more in financial aid than what their bill is, and that you should have a refund coming to you. If the refund is from your student's financial aid, that money will refund to your student. It will refund either in a check form, which we mail out to students to their local mailing address, or they can set up direct deposit and have those funds go into a bank account of their choice. If the money is coming from a parent loan, from your loan, if that's where the refund is coming from, that money will be mailed to you or will go to your student, depending upon what you selected to have those funds go to. Any refunds are not available to a student until the Friday before classes start. So you may see a refund on your student's account earlier in that week before classes start, but we are not releasing those. We can't release those funds until the Friday before classes start. So that's when you can expect to see funds potentially either in a bank account, or the check may have been mailed out to your student at that point in time. If your student would like to set up direct deposit, the form can be found on their financial tab on their URSA account. There's a form to fill out, and then they can email it back to the card office or bring it in to campus to the card office as well. So that's how they can get that direct deposit set up. They will need a canceled check or a letter from their bank with their banking information of where they would like those funds to go.
Kathy, I think there was a follow-up question with that. So the question is, just to clarify, did you say books cannot go to the student bill? If so, how can they use financial aid to pay for books?
Yes, that is correct. Books cannot be charged to their student bill. So if you have the excess money from their financial aid, you can take that money and pay for their books if you would like to. But they are not allowed to be charged onto their student account. Our bookstore is a separate entity from the university.
Okay, we have a few more questions that are coming in. Can the due dates for fall payments be found on the Bursar website?
Yes, they should be out there. If they aren't published out there yet, we will make sure to get our calendar updated so that way you can see when all of the billing information is due. So I will double check and make sure that our website is up to date with that information.
Our next two questions are related, so I will ask them at the same time. Does UNC have a credit union, and is there a bank or bank ATM on campus? And if so, which bank?
UNC does not have its own credit union. There are some obviously credit unions in Greeley that your student may be able to utilize if they choose to. There is not a bank on campus. There are some Wells Fargo ATM machines on campus, but we don't have a bank on campus.
Do Do we have other questions that we want to ask? Give a final call.
These are great questions.
They are. Okay. Is the Wells Fargo office in the Student Center permanently closed, or is that just related to the pandemic?
It is permanently closed.
Who do we ask to check to see if our student has applied for the Colorado Opportunity Fund stipend?
You should contact the bursar's office. So give us a call and we can take a look at it. We have access to see if they've applied with this state, so we can look at all of that for you and to make sure records match up for you. So give us a call or send us an email and we will look into that for you.
Right, we will give a few seconds for some final questions. That is a great question, sort of unrelated to these folks, but students will move into housing. Let me grab the exact date for you. On August 19th, it's a Thursday. It's the Thursday before classes start, and then classes will start Monday, the 23rd. And again, if you do have housing or dining related questions, we have a parent orientation session that is specifically for those folks, and they'll be able to answer in a lot more detail what move-in will look like and dining plans and that sort of information. Right. Unless there are any final questions that come through, how do we access the recording of the session? The recording of the session will be posted on our website, and sort of the days following we'll get it kind of quickly edited and then get it onto our website, the admissions website and the orientation portal where you registered. So we will get that posted in the following days.
Cedric, this is Ken. Just a good phone number for Bear Central is 970-351-4862. You can reach the office of the registrar there. You can reach the student accounts bursar's office there, and you can also reach the Office of Financial Aid. So that's a good number to know. And so it's again, 970-351-4862 or 4UNC.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any final questions in the chat. So thank you all so much for coming in today and presenting to our parents and support people. I know that they have traditionally always loved this presentation and really appreciated it. And I know that these are some of the most difficult and pressing questions that they have as they look to support their student coming into college. So thank you all. And there's lots of love and appreciation in the chat happening. So I think you did some great work and answered some important questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For
Bye.
parents, we will see you at our future sessions. There's a link in chat if you want to register for any more of them. But other than that, that is our programming for today. So thank you so much for coming in. And you can reach out to orientation@unco.edu if you have additional questions about parent orientation.